rescue when I'm on scene, I'll be assuming Caroline Street Command. I got a 2.5-story wood occupied multiple dwelling. I got heavy fire from the second floor, Charlie side. I have an exposure on the Delta side. We have one line stretch not in operation yet. Primary searches are underway. Status of the fire is doubtful. One passing command. I'm on the first line. Speed advisor on scene. 2-story wood frame. I got heavy fire from the Alpha side.
All right, welcome back to episode 4 of the Volley Chief podcast. This is Chief Lenart. Very exciting episode because this is my first guest episode. So I decided to make it simple and go back to the person who forced me into this. And I'm here with Mike Witek. I'll let him introduce himself in a moment. But the background is I began preaching the volunteer command and the use of an aid and all that so much that Mike finally told me I should probably put my money where my mouth is. And I should do this as a program. And I presented it last year and this year at the Fire Pro Expo at Foxwoods Casino. It's every October, usually around Halloween time. Phenomenal conference, well-attended conference, good. You know, it started out as a local conference, but now it's gaining a lot of traction. So, Mike suggested that I put this class out, and that's kind of how we're here. So I'll let Mike introduce himself.
Like you said, I'm Mike Witek. I'm captain of Marine Division for the Storm Engine Company, Ambulance, and Rescue Corps.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
And, Mike, you've been a member of the fire department since?
Beginning of time.
Yeah. I think he changed a horseshoe or two.
Yeah.
When did you join?
1976.
76. Now, if you remember a couple episodes ago, I was mentioning the older instructors at the Storms and how, one of the reasons the Storms is such a good volunteer firehouse is because of those guys. Mike's one of those guys. They at a very young age kind of became students of the job, and they pushed training and education, and it led to them pushing us to be the next generation. So there's a lot of us out there that don't like to admit it, but Mike was instrumental in helping us. And he's a little bit modest. He's in charge of our Marine Division. He was a member of the fire department, like you said. He's a retired police officer. He was actually a sniper for the police department. He's got a lot of credit. He's a lot of instructor, a lot of training hours under his belt. So I'll say he's being a little bit modest, but we know he's not like me. He can't talk about himself for an hour every week. But like Mike said, he's in charge of our water rescue. It's a very coveted position. Derby, situated at the confluence of two rivers. If you want to give a brief description of what we have for assets.
We have 2 Carolina skiffs that we use. We use those because they're affordable. They take a beating, and us being a volunteer organization, we don't usually have the funds or the luxury of having nice, fancy vessels. But honestly, you don't need them. They serve our purposes very well. And we also have a 19-foot inflatable that we recently got, replacing the older one. And that, again, is really good. That stays on a rescue, and that's available for, we could deploy that quickly, or areas where you can't get a hard bottom boat in. So.
Yeah, and we do a lot of water calls here in Derby. Again, we sit at two rivers. Summertime comes, everyone's out in the water.
Yeah, not to mention the reservoirs. Yeah, so,
right. And you're very familiar with those. So, the water rescue and water is kind of part of us. So I figure with this time of year, especially for those of us who listen up in the northern part of the country, it's getting cold. I mean, we've had some frost already. So, Mike handles all of our water rescue, which encompasses surface water and ice rescue. He's been an instructor for a long time for ice rescue, and he's kind of, in this area, our go-to guy for that. So, Mike, what would you say, to prepare for the winter? What would you recommend at this point a department should be probably already have done or in the process of doing?
Just like you said, have already done or in the process. When you have your drills, if you're a volley house and you meet once a week or, whatever your drill schedule is, not a bad time to start pulling out your suits, your exposure suits, checking them, the integrity of them, waxing the zippers, making sure that all your liners are snapped in place, ready to go. Check them for holes, for leaks. Make sure the neoprene is in good shape. Whatever you use for flotation or a rope, pull them out of the bag, check it. It's not something you use all the time during the summer, so make sure your equipment is squared away. Now, getting ready to train and getting ready for any potential rescues down the line.
And Mike, what do you use as kind of your gauge for when you should start switching over to your cold water response?
70-degree temperature, 70-degree water. Listen, you could be in 80-degree water in the summertime, but if you stay in it long enough, you can get hypothermic in that too. So it's, I guess, 70 is probably a good judge.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's what, I mean, it's an industry standard though, correct?
Oh, wow.
Isn't it though? I mean,
I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, again, up here in New England, it's getting cold. You get down, even if you start heading down a little bit farther south, you get into like the Mid-Atlantic region. It's still, the water temperature is rapidly dropping. The days are getting colder and shorter. So, yeah, I agree. And I think one of the biggest mistakes most departments make when it comes to is zipper maintenance on the suit.
Yes.
And it's something simple because it's not an expensive maintenance cost, right? I mean,
a little paraffin wax is all
right.
you need.
A little bit of wax, you wax it, and zip up the suit. And from years of dealing with the suits, the amount of zippers that I've seen either break or have problems with or just be stuck, a lot of times that's it. It's just that preventive maintenance of the wax. And like you said, you use them for the winter, and then you throw them in a closet all summer, and nobody remembers them. And then now this time of year, you pull them out and you open the bag up, and now you're trying to pull the zipper. But yeah, definitely. I think that's probably one of the best maintenance tips is the zipper is kind of.
Yeah, and you know yourself when you don't zip it up all the way and you do that first drill in that cold water and
take
a little water. Yeah, the cold. It's painful. Yeah.
So would you say surface ice rescue? Where would you put that? It is, for us up here in the Northeast, it's kind of pretty simple. What do you think?
It is because it's in our wheelhouse, but it doesn't make it any less dangerous or risky. And you have to make that judgment call. You have to be able to say go, no go. Whether the Coast Guard uses the GAR scale. I kind of like that. I think you have to apply that to anything, and you have to make a decision. Sometimes it could be a painful decision. It's in our nature to always go at any risk, but you also have to think of your members.
Now with that, right, here's kind of something we could talk about. We've always had the argument about animal rescues, right? And now there's two sides to the coin, correct?
Yep.
One side is, it's an animal. We're not going to risk a person for it. But historically, the problem with that is if it's a dog, if it's a domestic animal, and the fire department says, "Oh, sorry, we can't do it," and they start packing up the leave, someone's going to get that dog.
Absolutely right. For any dog owners out there, if you call somebody for help and they say no, you know, in your heart of hearts, you're going to go out and do what you can for that dog. Right.
And I think that's something that, like you said, when you take that go, no go, or what's the risk level, yeah, it's just a dog. But I can tell you, the minute you turn your back, the owner, the kids, someone's going to try to go get that animal. And now you're going to come back, and I hate to say it, you're going to look doubly bad. Because first, you didn't help the animal. And second, now you got a human in danger, and their response is going to be, well, the fire department didn't do anything. They were here.
Yeah. And some of that might, as we're talking, I'm thinking, maybe some of that could be mitigated by educating the public early. This time of year, get out in front of it and just say, hey, listen, if you're out there walking with your dog and there's a potential for them to get out on the ice, put them on a leash. Just kind of stop it from happening if you can. You're not going to be able to stop all of it, but, you take the wins when you get them,
Right. And then as far as the incident command side of things, like what do you think are some key factors that incident commanders either miss or need to know for handling ice rescues or cold water emergencies?
Well, you have to know your members. And guilty as charged. When I was younger, I never thought of this, but as you get older and you have kids and you start to think and you start to value, your values change a little bit. One, physical conditioning. People underestimate the exertion that you put on yourself when you're out there in a suit and you're either paddling out on one of the Marsar boards or any other rescue device out there. It's exerting, and then you get in that water. Now you have the pressure of the water. You have the excitement. If it's multiple victims and you're back and forth, even for the crew on shore pulling that line. So many people underestimate. You have 100 yards of line out or 100 feet of line out, and you're pulling it through that slush. I could put a full bag of line out and put it in slushy ice, and you're going to have a hard time pulling it with no load on the end, only because of the amount of friction. So things like that are underestimated. The other thing as far as like crew goes, have an ambulance standing by just for your crew. Have ambulance for the victims, but have an ambulance dedicated just for your crew members. I think that's overlooked a lot of times.
And now I know so Mike and I have debated a lot about is the, if you're out in a boat, if it's a offshore rescue, you're out in a vessel, what should everyone in the vessel be wearing? Because you see it time and time again, right? You see pictures on the trade magazines, on the internet. You'll see the middle of the winter, the boat, the two guys going to do the rescue are in Mustang suits. They're ready to go. And the boat operators in, jeans and a winter jacket.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about that? Or what would you recommend?
So, anybody who's going to go in the water, absolutely, a Mustang suit or a dry suit, whatever your department has at that point. But just remember flotation. Mustang suit is not going to have, and I say Mustang suit, it could be any first watch, any of those. The flotation is reduced when you don't have the liner in, so you need to keep that in mind. But the boat operator should have insulated coveralls. This way their feet are clear, and you need to put them on properly. That's the main thing. If you don't put it on the correct way, if you don't put your PFD on correctly, you might as well not have it because it actually is a hindrance. You go in without your PFD snapped, it's going to float up in the back. It's going to be hard to get that, especially when you hit that cold water. A lot of things are going to go on, within your body. But those cold water exposure suits, cinch them up at the ankles, cinch them up at the wrists, zip them correctly. So if you do go in, you have that barrier. You're not flushing that cold water across your body. But it still allows you to operate. Have neoprene gloves so you can still operate the wheel, operate the controls, and whatever the case is there. But the guys going in the water, girls, Mustang suits at a minimum.
Yeah, and it is. It's a very manpower-intense rescue. It's a very laborious rescue, and they're, I feel like they're getting more and more frequent.
It seems to be, yeah. We're getting called for different calls. Not only the volume is increasing, but the variety of why you're going there is increasing.
Right. I mean, several years ago, we had I call it cold water, where we had a person fall off our train trestle.
Yeah.
Across the bridge and, going into Shelton. And they were actually, you talk, I don't know if you call it luck or not luck, but they landed at low tide on the rocks around the train trestle. So the person they were out of the water, so it technically wasn't a water rescue, but you had to get to them by boat. And, as simple as that sounds, the members got out there. Thankfully, the two members that left the boat to treat the victim were both in cold water suits.
Yes.
But again, one of them slipped on a wet rock. I believe he got a concussion.
Right. So, just thought about this too when you said that. Your headgear. Our bags we have the helmets for every suit. I think he had his helmet on, and he whacked his grape hard enough that he rung his bell.
Right. Fortunately, there's nothing in there. We know who it was, and
yeah.
I
felt bad for the rock.
Yeah. I felt bad for the rock. So. But yeah, that's and again, it's different.
But you just brought up a thought. That rescue, we had a choice, right? It was either going to be a rope rescue from a train trestle or water rescue, and that was the lesser of the two evils. But that's kind of where your pre-planning comes in too. Now's a good time of year. You're looking for something to do on a Sunday, hop in the truck, go around, check it out, okay, and pick a spot. Just, hey, if somebody's here, what are we going to do? Are we going to approach from this side of the riverbank or that side of the riverbank? Or are we going to do the rope rescue, or are we going to do it from a boat? Those are just things that by having that discussion, it's not a surprise for you on the day that you do get that call.
Right, because we joke, right? In all the years that most of us have been in our towns and all the years, nobody's put a new river in.
That's true.
Right? Nobody's put a new river in, maybe, a new retaining pond, but there's been no new rivers, no new lakes, anything like that. It's kind of been there. So the excuse of not knowing how to access it, or even knowing, the I'm trying to think of the word, but like the local names for things. Mm-hmm. So if you take our area here in Derby, our old fire school, a lot of people refer to it as Fire Island, or you
Sullivan's Island.
Sullivan's Island, or know all the names. Like that's almost another drill you could do, is to take your map of your city and start pointing out these local nicknames of areas, of places. Mike and I, way back, we used to work as lake patrol officers on the upper part of the river where there's a lake. And you think about just that section of the river. You had McConaughey's Grove, Pink House Cove, the Maples, Indian Neck.
Or just knowing that shallow water. You
Right,
yourself,
no,
getting up
yes.
to the dam, there's only one section of the river you can navigate by boat. Otherwise, you see all the paint from everyone's engines and from running aground.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about pre-planning, and it applies on the water. If you know how to get the boats in and out, where you can get the boats. I mean, we've had calls where we've had neighboring towns, and they're calling us to say, hey, we have to put a boat in the water. Like, do you have a spot? Like, it's a river. You should know kind of where the ins and outs are and how to get to it.
And to that point, if you want to do a drill and you want to do it in a firehouse one night, get together where you could bring up a Google map of your town, and you'll be surprised. Our neighboring town, Ansonia, Seymour, they have the quarries,
right.
And there's quarries in people's backyards, and there's quarries that the average person, especially now over time, houses have been sold, people have moved in, they probably don't even know they exist. But you, as a first responder, when you're tasked to perform that rescue in that area, do you even know it exists? And if when you do get called there, have you pre-planned it? What's my access point going to be? Can I even access it there? Like the reservoirs up here, we thought about mutual aid for brush fires and all that other stuff, is creating a grid system so that, in our town, if it's grid A1, in the next town, it's also grid A1.
Right. Yeah. So
we're talking the same language.
Right. And what we're talking about is we have a reservoir system that is mostly in Derby. It brushes Ansonia, and we had somebody going through. We were getting these brush fires, and it was getting confusing on the radio because I know this as whatever hollow. This person knows it. So we came up with a grid system, and we just sat down with the neighboring department, made a map, and literally A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that way, if we had an incident, and again, it's something local, but we shared it with our dispatch center. The members use it, and it's a simple idea to solve a problem.
Even if it's just quadrants, even if it's not multiple grids, just keep it so that everybody's in the same area.
Right.
But again, that's pre-planning those areas. Reservoirs, sometimes you have to walk through a quarter mile of woods to get to the body of water. How are you going to do that? Are you going to put your suits on before you get in there? Hopefully not, because you puncture them on sticks or whatever the case is. And once you get the victim, how are you going to get them out? Half the problem is only solved at that point.
Right. That and so years ago we still had a dive team, and prior to us getting rid of the dive team, that was an issue we came across. Right. We had to make a dive in an area that wasn't accessible really by vehicle, and it led to us having to carry a lot of equipment over a big distance. So we actually went down to our local Home Depot, and they're good deal. And in a lot of the smaller towns, the volunteer departments, go to your local stores. You'd be amazed what they'll give you. And we actually got a couple of job boxes, the wheelable big husky job boxes with the big wheels in the back. So this way we were able to put equipment in those. So the next time we have an incident where somebody's got to walk all the equipment in, you could throw it in there. And obviously nowadays you have UTVs, four-wheel drive vehicles, stuff like that you could throw it in. But there are, like you said, there are some times where, to quote Indiana Jones, we walk from here.
Yeah, and don't underestimate the need for like a roof ladder, and sometimes even an extension ladder. In another life of mine, you will use hard hat divers, and the only way they're going to access the body of water, because there's the rocky ledge, is we put an extension ladder down, and the divers will actually walk down the extension, even though it's an embankment, it's not vertical. They'll use that ladder because it's sure-footedness. It's you could pull a Stokes up there if you had to, and it's just a good entry and exit point to the water.
Now, Mike, what about shore operations? So we all agree that any type of technical rescue, the biggest problem you have is how close people get.
Yeah, it's a pet peeve of mine.
So talk about that for a little bit.
So you and I both agree on this. So whenever we say hot, warm, and cold zone, we instantly think of hazmat, right? But I like to apply that to any scene. Thank you, hazmat, for bringing that to us. But in especially water rescue, if you have the potential to get wet, whether that's step in the water or even slide down a steep embankment into the water, that should be considered the hot zone. Anybody in the hot zone must be wearing a PFD and be wearing it correctly. Then you're going to have your warm zone where your support staff is going to be, and then your cold zone. And cold zone is going to be where your media is going to be, and so on. And one thing to think about, and I think this is overlooked a lot, is if this is an extended operation and you're going to start having family members show up, have a place for them, have a private place for them, offer them, creature comforts, make sure there's a place where they can be insulated from media, maybe, something warm to drink if it's a winter operation, and, just help them through the process.
Right, because we actually experienced that. We did have an incident. Body of water. The family showed up, and it was a teenager, a kid, and we had to figure out that it was a long time frame that the kid was under. It was obvious that it wasn't going to be a resuscitation, and we were trying to work with the family standing over us. We were in another town, so it wasn't we can control as much as we could. But yeah, that's a phenomenal point.
And don't overlook your support from law enforcement, because someone from the public may be watching your operation, and in their mind or their opinion, you may not be doing enough fast enough, and they're going to decide to be like a rogue rescuer, freelance or whatever themselves. You need to have to control that, because now you're starting to tax your system, because if they go in and they fall through the ice or get become a compromised swimmer, that's that's another rescue you have to perform. So just kind of, you got to have your head on a swivel and be aware of that stuff going on.
And then another lovely topic in the water rescue world that I like to talk about, your thoughts on turnout gear and near the water with it.
If you're near the water, you shouldn't have it.
Right.
And
that's something that Mike and I, we both agree on, but, and I get it. In the wintertime, a lot of times at night, that's your force of habit, right? Your muscle memory is to put your gear on. I don't believe in turnout gear near the water. Technically it's supposed to float, but, it's just a hindrance, and I get it. A lot of times these calls are in the cold, hence the reason we're wearing cold water stuff. But I just think that, members need to be prepared to be outdoors, long duration, and not rely on turnout gear.
I agree. If it's a small vessel, run about 19, 20 foot, whatever you name it, by the time you get there and do anything, that's destroyed. It's going to burn to the water line. And if you're in a dock and it's going to catch other vessels on fire, cut the lines and push it free, and then just get out of there. But your idea of the water RIT team, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So we had an incident one time. We had a boat fire, and I was the safety officer for the incident, and I requested another company in suits in case one of the members went in. So we kind of called it like the water RIT team, just in case, Yeah. So you had the RIT team in case a firefighter got trapped in the boat, but I also had a RIT team in case someone slipped off the dock. And again, I get leery about gear, and especially in the winter at an ice rescue. If you look, every firefighter standing around the edge of the water is usually wearing gear, and then of course half of them don't have their life jackets on, or who's wearing it but it's not buckled. But it's the little attention to detail that when something goes wrong, makes the big difference.
Yeah. And I'm jumping back a little bit, but I feel this is important when you asked about incident commanders and other things to think about. Is you got somebody in a cold water exposure suit, and they're out in the water or on the ice, whatever. They're in the body of water, and they're on that line, and they come back in, and they it's successful. They bring the victim in, they get him on a Stokes or whatever, they get him into the bus, and everybody, they're all concentrating on the victim at this point. Don't forget your rescuer. If you're a line tender and you're assigned to rescuer 1, 2, or blue, red, however you assign it in your department, the line tender needs to remember that's your responsibility. There's people to handle the victim once they get there. And if there's not, then you as an incident commander need to bring more people in. But you can't forget the rescuer. And I highly recommend once they come off the ice or out of the water, have them eval'd by EMS, because their blood pressure is going to be stoked.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're going to be pumped. And like you said, get an ambulance for them. Get them somewhere warm. Get them where they can get the suit off. They can kind of just decompress for a few minutes. So,
yeah, that's very important. They got to come down from that.
Yeah, So that's it. Like I said, Mike Witek, captain from the Storm Ambulance. Been a member of the fire department for a very long time now. 8-tracks were a thing when he joined. Plectrons were a thing when he joined. Vinyl. There you go. So, Mike, I thank you. Now, Mike's going to come back because, again, since he made me do this, I'm going to make him do it. We're going to do a couple more episodes probably coming up soon. Mike's law enforcement background and stuff that we've done together. We're going to be doing a volunteer response to active shooter, episode, and then I'll probably make them come back once in a while too, especially in the springtime when we're getting close to warm water. So that's it. I want to thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe. Click on the links below so that I keep popping up in your feed. And remember, it's the volley_chief on Instagram. If you want to be on the show, if you have questions, it's thevolleychief@gmail.com. Have a good night, and we'll see you at the big one.